I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times. Welcome to the New York Times Close Up. In a moment, we'll talk with one of the city's foremost chroniclers, the historian Mike Wallace. He's written a sequel to his Pulitzer Prize-winning Gotham, this one called Greater Gotham. It's reviewed in the Sunday Times Book Review. My Times colleagues discuss the week's lead stories on the backstory. And I'll offer some final words with Coda. But first, Mike Wallace. He's Distinguished Professor of History at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and CUNY's Graduate Center. His latest work continues the epic Gotham, a history of New York City to 1898. He wrote that with Ted Burroughs, with Greater Gotham, a history of New York City from 1898 to 1919. It's just been published by Oxford University Press, reviewed in the Sunday Times Book Review by the Times' Joseph Berger, who says this is just as magisterial a book as Gotham was. Now, this book weighs about 4 pounds, has more than 1,000 pages. That takes a big investment from readers, Mike. What do you want them to walk away with after they've read it?
I'd like to have them get a sense of how the city worked, how it developed, and some background on how the city functions today. I'd like them to have a good time. I'd like them to enjoy. It's composed of hundreds of stories. There's 1,351 names in the names index.
One of the things that I find fascinating, because you tell the story through people, which makes it so much a wonderful narrative, is the thrust of the book is all about consolidation. Consolidation corporately, consolidation governmentally. What was the motivation behind consolidation in that period?
People like J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller didn't like one another. They didn't get on, but they agreed on one thing, that free enterprise capitalism was for the birds, that if you let cutthroat competition be the rules of the economic game, firms would lose profits, then they would be unionized, then if you repressed the unions, then there'd be socialists calling for an end to capitalism. This was a terrible way to run a railroad as far as they were concerned. So between 1898 and 1904, they engineered a massive consolidation of the economy. Thousands of small competing firms winked out and were replaced by hundreds of giant corporations like United States Steel. They argued that this was, in fact, not a power grab, not robber baronism, but a progressive development, that it left the primitive era behind, allowed you to do planning, would smooth out the ups and downs of the business cycle. They had the wind of history blowing their sails forward into the future. And the notion that consolidation was a solution to various kinds of problems was also applied in the political sphere. They and their cohorts thought that the notion that the two great cities around the harbor and the scores of political jurisdictions were competing with one another, this was nuts. Who was minding the store? The port needed work, there was sewage pouring into it, the docks weren't big enough. There were many problems that could better be dealt with if, in fact, the cities were brought together, and they were in 1898. So consolidation then becomes a mantra or a meme, if I've got the meaning of meme straight, which I'm never terribly clear about. So libraries consolidated. There was the Astor Library, the Lenox Library, the Tilden Library. They come together, they create the New York Public Library. Columbia College is a drowsy school for middle-class gentry. Now, in this new early 20th century era, they devote themselves to turning out the corporate executives, the managers, the professionals. They combine with the medical school, with the law school, with the nursing school, with the teaching school, and they create Columbia University. This is considered de rigueur increasingly for cultural institutions, for political institutions, for economic institutions.
You were going to write a book about the United States history. You decided to condense it somewhat and tell the story through New York. In the course of that, did you discover that there is a New York exceptionalism, that New York is different from the rest of the country?
The degree of difference is probably overrated, but not by much. The scale of the city, once New York and Brooklyn combine, they are now far and away the biggest city in the country, twice that of Chicago, the number 2. And they're pulling up near London for the number 1 city on the planet. So size is one thing. The degree to which Wall Street is influenced, whether benign or malignant, depends on your perspective, but there's a tremendous power radiating out from it. It's the center of cultural imports. It's the center of labor imports, and that, of course, for some people is a problem. This is the major port of entry for immigration. In this period, there's a massive surge of immigration. And it's not just that immigrants come in as a dissolved, one-by-one droplet function. They move into enclaves. So there's the Jewish enclave, the German enclave, the Irish enclave. And these are vast enough, unlike a lot of smaller places, so that they can sustain native language culture, they can dress, food, newspapers, theater, etc. And this is considered by some in the heartland as an un-American agglomeration of strange peoples, and there's dismay at this. Also, there are too many black people, there's too many Jews, too many Catholics, there's Tammany Hall, corrupt politicians. The country is in favor of prohibition. New York is going to fight it to the last drop.
Literally the last drop.
Literally the last drop.
You've been described as a radical historian. Is this a radical history?
It's radical in the sense that it goes to the root of things, and it embraces in its narrative everybody. Traditionally in the U.S., not only the U.S., but in the 1950s, when I was a kid still, the narrative of American history was utter benignity and extremely narrow gauge. There were no blacks in this traditional story. Well, yes, there were slaves, but they were happy. There was George Washington Carver. He did something with peanuts. Women, half the population wasn't there in the standard narrative. Betsy Ross was doing the American flag, et cetera, et cetera. And in the 60s and the 70s, social movements demanded entry to the real world. So the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the gay movement, the anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam. And what my generation of historians did was to incorporate all those people in the historical narrative. So in tandem with social movements in the streets, we rediscovered the history of racism, of sexism, of imperialism, and the like. And this was radical by the standards of the day.
And what's come out is a book that is filled with fascinating facts and, as you say, fun. Thanks to Professor Mike Wallace for joining us, and Greater Gotham, A History of New York City from 1898 to 1919, just been published by Oxford University Press, reviewed in the Sunday Times Book Review by Joseph Berger. And my Times colleagues join me for the backstory in just a moment. Welcome back to the New York Times Close-Up. What kind of week was it? The mayoral candidates, or should we say combatants, held their first debate on Tuesday. The audience may have been recruited from Madison Square Garden. Some disturbing statistics released by the state revealed that more than 100,000 students in the public schools in the city were homeless at some point last year. Movie mogul and major Democratic Party contributor Harvey Weinstein accused of sexual harassment and worse. Joining me to discuss these stories and more, my New York Times colleagues, contributing writer Eleanor Randolph, City Hall Bureau reporter William Neuman, and Metro Education reporter Kate Taylor. Willie, you had to sit through that mayoral debate on Tuesday night. How do you think it went? Did anyone make any difference in terms of who they were appealing to in this campaign?
I don't think it affects the outcome of the election, first of all, because there's such a wide gap between the mayor and both Nicole Malliotakis and Bo Dietl. The most recent Quinnipiac poll has the mayor up 44%. It's a predominantly, overwhelmingly Democratic city, et cetera. And I think also very few people watch the debate. But what I liked
Why did they bother debating then?
Well, because they're required to under the
campaign
finance rules. If you take matching funds, you're required to debate, and both the mayor and Ms. Malliotakis do. And Bo was invited because he had reached a certain fundraising threshold, even though he doesn't participate. But I was in the auditorium, and then the next day I watched part of it on what people saw on television.
You're a glutton for punishment.
Well, you know, it has been an election, a campaign that has not registered pretty much with anybody. It's been almost without interest, both on in the primaries and now in the general election campaign. And at least for an hour and a half, it had a pulse. There was energy. I thought that the mayor, who very often can sort of come across as above it all and professorial and even uninterested in stuff that you know that he's interested in, like education and other things, was forced to, with all the crowd shouting and heckling, he had to speak over these people and lean forward. He was actually leaning into his job, which is not something you always feel. And then he also had to respond primarily to Nicole Malliotakis with certain barbs and charges that...
Did his rivals hold him accountable on any issues?
No. I mean, that's the problem. For me, the greatest shortcoming of the debate wasn't all the hubbub and the noise and the shouting. It was the fact that you have here the mayor who knows the issues backwards and forwards. Whether you like his policies or not, he does that job. And then you had the two challengers who are very soft on issues, and their role has mostly been to criticize the mayor, take pot shots, and not come out with real programs or alternative approaches to the city's real problem.
I was just so glad nobody had a weapon, and because
none of the debaters.
That was the strangest debate I have seen in a very long time. And in fact, I think if you're going to do another debate, maybe you should hold it at de Blasio's gym, and everybody should just strip down and wrestle. You know, I mean, it was like punching bags, and you know, and all this screaming from Bo Dietl that just every once in a while you could see why there was much more energy in the room, because Dietl sort of shouts. He's like this screamer at the circus or something like that.
He does not belong at the table. And I mean, he comes out of Fox News and Imus in the morning. And so what he's learned about the media is that you're provocative and outrageous and you take extreme positions and you shout, and that's how you get attention. And that's what he brought to that debate. And that took away from
but
the
that's
debate,
where
obviously.
The energy came
What
from.
about having an audience?
But also came from the people in the audience, although I think that those were largely Bo's people who were...
Yeah, I think he packed the house.
And
I don't know about that, because the tickets were open.
Yeah, but if you were just watching and you were listening, every time Bo Dietl said something, that audience, the only time you heard anything else is a couple of people yelled 4 more years.
There was a lot of people shouting 4 more years.
4 more years.
There was plenty
and I
of the
assume
mayor's
that was
people
for
there.
de Blasio.
Yeah.
Well,
They wanted to
really,
debate
guess.
one for 4 years. So.
Hey,
well, I was just going to say, in terms of the issues that they didn't debate, as an education reporter, it was particularly frustrating that they didn't have a serious discussion of education, on which the mayor has many weaknesses, and his record has plenty of holes that people could point out and challenge, and his opponents are just not equipped to do that. And the only time it came up was this one question about, you know, what is the city doing about the racial segregation of schools? And de Blasio gave his kind of wandering lame answer, and neither of the other people had anything substantive to say about that very
Well, Kate, everybody would agree that turning education around in the city is probably a generational job. But is there any way of determining whether, in fact, it's gotten any better under Mayor de Blasio?
Well, de Blasio would say you could look at the fact that test scores for elementary and middle school students are continuing to slightly improve. It's hard to say if that really means anything because the tests have changed and now students can take them unlimited time. Graduation rates have continued to improve, so that's good. But it's hard to say whether that's a result of changes that were made before or anything that de Blasio has done. I think that, you know, one of the two major education policies that de Blasio has pursued are his pre-kindergarten expansion, which, as measured simply by the numbers of children in pre-kindergarten, is a success.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it'll be a long time till we see if that has any effect on high school graduation
But
rates.
we have to assume it's a net plus, or going to be.
It is absolutely a net plus, and I think that even the mayor's education critics would agree with that. His other major policy, which has been much less clearly successful, is what's called the Renewal Schools Initiative, which is where he basically said, we're not going to close struggling schools, we're going to throw millions of dollars at them and try to improve them, and it's not clear that that's worked.
You said earlier that there are hundreds of teachers sitting around doing nothing?
Well, they're not precisely doing nothing. This is what you're talking about is the absent teacher reserve, which is a group of teachers who have lost their positions but are still getting paid full salaries. And so this cost
Lost them because of what?
They lost them for a variety of reasons. In some cases, the city tried to remove them for misconduct or incompetence and was unsuccessful, but didn't return them to their previous school. In some cases, they worked at schools that closed, or they worked at schools that had enrollment loss or budget changes for other reasons. Sometimes principals intentionally use that to get rid of them. In any case, they lost their positions, but they're still getting paid. And they're supposed to be looking for jobs, but it's not clear that all of them actually want to get jobs because it's a little easier to just go substitute in a class. And so they get sent into schools for a month at a time, either substituting, or if the principal can't find anything for them to do or thinks they're so terrible they don't want to put them in front of kids, they put them in the teacher's lounge. Now what the city is doing, because this is a huge expense and they haven't been able to figure out something else to do to shrink this pool, they're going to place these people in schools that have vacancies. If a principal, has a science vacancy that they haven't been able to fill and there's a science person in the ATR, they're going to say, okay, you have to take this teacher.
Why didn't they do this before, and are they going to place the teachers they tried to fire in these schools?
They may. They're saying they have discretion to not place teachers if there are particular concerns about their history, but those teachers they tried to fire may be among them. They didn't do this before. I think they've been very hesitant to do this because some of these teachers are not people you would want in classrooms, and the whole the Bloomberg administration, in a deal with the teachers union in 2005, established this policy that you couldn't force teachers on principals and you couldn't force teachers into jobs that they didn't want. It was this idea of mutual consent hiring that had not been the case before. Previously, a senior teacher could just claim a vacancy in a school and the principal had no say. And the Bloomberg administration recognized, rightly, that you couldn't very well hold principals accountable for the performance of their school if they couldn't choose who they wanted to hire. So that's what's really being threatened by this.
It's too bad they can't use some of that money and retrain some of these people not to be teachers. Maybe they're good people, but they're not meant to be teachers.
Well, what should they retrain them as?
They could be entrepreneurs, they could go hedge fund operators, they could be, talk about money, they could be plumbers or electricians. That would be great. But, clearly they're
I'm not sure that's
good
practical. But
teachers. And you can't just throw people out on the street. That'll be worse.
You can't send them back to schools if they're not competent, can you?
Well, look, the way the union works, you can't actually fire them. So what you need to do,
Why not if they're not competent?
Well, the union
has
taken a very hard line on job protection. Once you're tenured, it's very, very hard to fire somebody.
As well it should be, but there ought to be some line where...
the union draws the line very far in the direction of job protection.
How many teacher vacancies are there that are going to be filled now?
There are something on the order of 800 vacancies, possibly.
Okay.
They are estimating that they're going to put about 400 teachers in vacancies.
And how many are sitting around doing nothing at the moment?
At the moment, I think it's around 12 or 1,300. Now, again, they're substituting in schools. They're not doing nothing, but they're not filling permanent jobs.
Mm-hmm. Willie, was there any indication in the debate or so far in this campaign what the mayor intends to do differently, if anything, in a second term should he win it?
Well, you know, it's fascinating because he has resisted coming out and saying, here's my second term vision. And he was asked about that at a news conference this week. And he was asked, well, why don't you tell us a few new things?
Why should we vote for you again?
And he refused. He said, well, you know, because it was also pointed out that when he was running the first time, he came out with this long list of, I forget, 100 and some things that he was going to do. And so where's the list this time? And he said, well, you know, it's different because I've been mayor for a while and I've got all these things that are in process. And so I'm going to be, you know, continuing with many of those things. But I've got some announcements, but I'll be making them in the coming weeks. It was very Trumpian. And, but what his people talk about and what he talks about is they say, well, we've promised to create 100,000 good paying jobs. We're going to be giving, we're going to be rolling out the body cameras for police officers, 3K. Those are the three things that they mention most often. Well, first of all, 3K he doesn't have the money to do, and he's already announced it. Body cameras, that comes out of the contract with the cops, and it's already a done deal. It just has to be, you know, implemented. And then the 100,000 good-paying jobs is this squishy, non-existent, you know, non-planned plan that is impossible to measure whether, you know,
has
those
anyone
jobs
counted how many of the 100 things he promised the first time have been enacted?
Yeah, well, they have this whole internal process of keeping track of that. And my colleague David
what
Goodman,
number are we up to?
Well, I don't know what the percentage is, but they sort of go through and they track those. And, you know, I think that they would tell you that they've gotten a long way on many of them.
Well, isn't he, I mean, how many points up? He's, what, 44 points
Yes.
up? The guy's coasting. He's really trying not to make a mistake, and that's really what he's doing now.
Okay, thank you. We expect to have the mayor on our program next week, so we'll ask these questions directly to him. Thanks to Eleanor Randolph, William Neuman, and Kate Taylor for joining us. I'll be back with some final words in a moment. When one of the students in Alan Bennett's play, The History Boys, is asked to define history, he thinks for a moment and replies, "History is just one damn thing after another." That's the myopic mindset of many New Yorkers, which is another reason to keep Christopher Columbus on his column in Columbus Circle. Like most monuments, the statue could provide an immutable, teachable moment. You'd never know it, though, from the plaque that's now at its base. The text sums up the explorer's life in these words: scoffed at before, during the voyage menaced, after it chained. The menacing part is accurate, given his mutinous crew. The scoffing was validated by the fact that he never found the real Indies and blundered instead upon a new continent. As for the chained, Columbus got off easy. He spent 6 weeks in a Spanish jail for brutally torturing the indigenous people he encountered. But before we say goodbye, Columbus, wouldn't it be wiser to consider him in context? While many Confederate monuments in the Jim Crow South were timed to defy social progress, Columbus's was conceived as a celebration of ethnic pride. Speaking of timing, amend the plaque to specify what he accomplished and where he transgressed and when. He committed his barbarism back in 1492. Think how far we had advanced 4 centuries later in 1892, when Italian Americans in our city of immigrants were honoring their compatriot with a statue. The American government then was still awarding congressional medals of honor to American soldiers who, like Columbus, had just massacred the Indians. And if we topple Columbus, what do we do about the District of Columbia, or the name New York for that matter? Our namesake, the Duke of York, had his initials branded on the chests of slaves whom his Royal African Company kidnapped in Africa. Or George Washington. When he was inaugurated as president in 1789, Washington had more slaves working for him back home in Mount Vernon than federal employees in New York. Less than a decade after the Columbus statue was unveiled, New York University's Hall of Fame was dedicated in the Bronx. At the dedication on Memorial Day 1901, the names that aroused the loudest cheers from Civil War veterans were Washington, Grant, and Robert E. Lee. The New York Times had editorialized even then against including Lee and the bitterness it would arouse. The safe and healing silence of the last 10 or 15 years has been rudely broken, the editorial said. The agreement to disagree has been violated. But in his dedication address in 1901, Senator Chauncey Depew defined fame as making history. He also described fame as fleeting, reminding his listeners that many graves in French cemeteries are leased for 20 or 50 years, then recycled. Perhaps, he suggested, inductees to the Hall of Fame should be reconsidered periodically too. Is amending a plaque just a sop? Would anyone read it? And as Mike Michonne, the Manhattan Borough historian, says, does reinterpretation turn a statue meant to be timeless into a tangential historical artifact? Symbols kindle memories and conversation. Maybe we need more of them, not less. Because the more we remember the past, the more we realize, as Maya Angelou wrote, that history cannot be unlived, but it need not be lived again. For the New York Times and CUNY TV, I'm Sam Roberts.